Today we're talking about DuPage County. There are 102 counties in Illinois. I Googled it, and DuPage County is the second largest in the state of Illinois. We handle over 1,000 cases there every year. So if you're a client of ours, or you just got charged with a traffic ticket or a criminal offense in DuPage County, we're going to break it down for you a little bit and maybe give you a leg up, at least some tips and maybe even some tricks on how you can handle a case in DuPage County. All right, Kelly. So when we talk about the policies and procedures and just sort of how they operate in DuPage County, what comes to mind?
A few things come to mind. One thing that I really like about DuPage is it's super consistent across like the entire courthouse and county, whereas some other neighboring counties aren't. And it like the courtroom procedures, whether you can appear on Zoom or when or for what purpose, literally differs from courtroom to courtroom to courtroom.
Yep.
So in DuPage, for example, if you have a ticket either in the Glendale Heights branch court, which we heard actually might be closing,
Yep.
or on the first floor of the DuPage courthouse, the main courthouse, that's all in person.
Yep.
They don't allow Zoom there at all, which can be a bummer if you actually need to come to court all the
Sure.
time. But one thing that's really nice about DuPage is that if you're kind of just going and getting a continuance for discovery or for the prosecutor to like look at your mitigation letter or something, they don't care that the client's not there.
Yeah. In a criminal case, there's a lot of gray area. Like that's what we got to figure out is resolve the criminal case, right? And we don't know how that'll shake out. Thankfully, though, the court system generally has removed the gray area from everything else. Like, if you need to file something, there's a form, right? And the clerk's office knows what the judges want, and the judges know how the clerk operates. And there's just not a lot of ambiguity when it comes to the operations of the courthouse. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's no ambiguity. It's super consistent across the entire courthouse. Like, for example, if what time your case is up on the call depends on whether or not you have to be there on Zoom or in person.
Yep.
So if it's up at 8:30, you can be on Zoom. But if it's up at like 9:30, 10:30, you definitely have to be there in person. So that's super nice. I mean, we're part of a Facebook group with a bunch of other attorneys, and people will post like, hey, do I have to be in person? We're just like, what time is it up? No, like we just know it like
You
the
just
back
know
of our
it.
hand.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause we're there so often. I think you brought up a good point too. You were saying like forms and filing. That makes me think of the clerk's office. The clerk's office there is an absolute dream. I think it's the best clerk's office of any of the counties that we practice in. Everyone who works there is pleasant and they are eager to help.
Yep.
They all have supervisors sitting right behind them too. And the supervisors are the same way. And then the court clerks, so the clerks who are actually in the courtrooms, I feel like they all like take their job seriously. They dress nicely. They're professional. When you approach them, they actually look at you and greet you. And
Right.
a lot of them like know us, our law firm, our driver
sure.
defense team, and they go out of their way to help you. You know, if the judge wants a file stamp copy of your motion, we do everything electronically. They're like, just email it to me and
Yeah.
I'll print it for you and stuff. But we can e-file everything there. Our appearances on a traffic ticket all the way to like a motion for discovery on a felony. So that's super important for anybody that has a DUI. You know, we want to get our
Yep.
filings on file as soon as possible because that starts a clock in the defendant's favor. We could do that literally the day they hire.
Yeah.
Whereas in other counties, we have to do it in person. So we have to, wait till we're there and stuff like that. So that's a huge advantage. And then another advantage is that the online clerk system, especially for attorneys, we have like a username, and password. We can literally see and pull up
Yes.
every single piece of paper that's in the clerk's file. And that makes a huge difference when a potential client is calling us, it may be about like an old case and wondering what happened, or potential clients calling us and we're wondering what's happened so far, if there's
Sure.
another attorney on the case. Again, with the DUI, we could pull their DUI paperwork, their confirmation of summary suspension. I mean, it's huge.
There's a lot. Yes. You listed off about 100 there.
Yeah.
we do business in the courthouse every day. We're literally there every day. Not a day goes by where driver defense team is not in the DuPage County courthouse. And so there's sort of two ways of doing business, or two things you got to do, right? One of them's like the actual handling of the case. And we're going to talk all about that. Officers, prosecutor's office, judges, outcomes. But then there's just sort of like the day-to-day operations of it, like I mentioned. And yes, an absolute dream. But one does bleed into the other, right? Like, you know, if you got a warrant on a case, like that's a legal issue, but like that's a lot of paperwork and people shuffling people around courtrooms and courthouses and where's the file and stuff like that. And DuPage, thank goodness, has got all that figured out. And it does allow the in-court sort of legal work to go smoother.
Right. Everything there is electronic. So, like in Cook County, for example, say you have a warrant from the 90s or something, you have to order that file. They have to get it from the warehouse. It literally takes weeks and weeks and weeks. And also, when you call the clerk's office in Cook County,
Yes.
typically nobody answers. Like literally somebody answers
Yeah.
the phone and like will know us driver defense team. And if they don't know the answer, they'll call the supervisor and call us back. But then say you want to put an old case on the call or you're changing the court date, filing a motion to advance, 9 times out of 10 in Cook County, you're going to get there and the file
Yes.
is not there. So then like there's one courtroom clerk, they have to like wait till the judge takes a break, go to the clerk's office, figure out where the file is, which could literally be anywhere inside of the clerk's office. None of that ever happens in DuPage because it's all electronic. Like you filed a motion and then just electronically the file is on
Yep.
the call for that day.
Yep. That's a whole nother video comparing Cook County and DuPage County procedures. Yes.
But
World of difference.
It makes our jobs easier. I think it's easier for us to manage clients' expectations, whether or not they have to take work off all the time to come to court, or if we could try and handle a lot of that for them. We could give them like a large amount of time to be prepared if they do need to take a day off work and stuff. It's just very consistent. You know what to expect. And then I feel like we can handle more too that way.
Yeah, exactly. And there's procedures written down and, they're not just making it up, right? They're unified, I would say.
Yes.
Whether you go to this clerk or that clerk or this judge or that judge or this prosecutor, whatever, they're all unified in sort of how they operate for the most part, right? At least compared to other places we practice. So we certainly appreciate that. Anything else you'd want to add?
I was just going to say too that like if a judge say has a policy that they do all their pleas at 10 and then they change that policy, they're really good about telling attorneys that, the attorney will be like, hey, I'd like to do a plea at 10. Can I come in? Like, just so you know, I changed my policy. So going forward, and it's written and stuff. So again, just consistency, expectations, that makes a big difference.
Yep. When it comes to the courtroom procedure or courthouse operations and procedure, they do it the way it should be.
For sure.
Unified, with clear procedures that are followed. They're professional. They don't wear shorts to work like unprofessional people. They're the best. So big shout out to the DuPage County court personnel and staff, 100%. All right, Kelly. So if somebody has court in DuPage County and they need to go to court in person, what are some things you'd tell them?
One thing is that you can't bring your cell phone into the courthouse with you. That's really good information to know ahead of time. So if you're like me, I'm always running late. I'd be really frustrated and stressed if I, got to the door and like, oh, you can't bring your cell phone in, and then you've got to go back to your car and come back.
Sure.
If there is something on your phone that you need to show to the judge, like say insurance or a photo or something, then they will give you a court order, and a sheriff literally escorts you outside to your car and back in, and then back out the building until like you're out of the building.
Right.
If you bring your cell phone in, because they don't want anybody like surreptitiously recording the proceedings. Another thing is like the parking there is super easy. There is free parking on the ground level, but if that's full, there's a huge parking garage that's free, like with an elevator super close to the building. They also have little lockers because some people are suspended or revoked, so they're taking an Uber, so you could put your phone in those little lockers.
Yep.
obviously you have to go through security. They're going to search you and stuff like that. But everyone in the building's super nice. Like as soon as you go past security and you get to the end of the hallway, there's a huge desk where there's a bunch of sheriffs. So if you ever don't know where to go, you could stop and ask them. The bathrooms are clean. Like the building is clean.
It is.
And there's also a cafe, which is super nice. Like
What?
you can get like a breakfast sandwich or a salad. You could get a pop or a water. I mean, especially if you're there all day, if you're on trial, if you're a
Sure.
jury member, so that's super nice. So just the building in and of itself is nice, and everyone who works there is very nice.
Could not agree more. Um, that brings me to the police officers, right? Oftentimes we're going against them. We're cross-examining police officers, so we don't have quite the same relationship with the officers as we do to, the nice courthouse staff, right? So, but let's talk about the officers generally. And this is general, right? This is just a comparison maybe to some of the other places that we practice. What are some things that come to mind, Kelly?
I think one thing that comes to mind with us practicing there so often is that we start to recognize certain officers' names,
Sure.
and maybe what their tendencies are. Like, for example, I could think of some troopers off the top of my head that I know that if we're set for trial, they're coming to court,
Yeah.
So one thing we do on like petty speeding tickets sometimes as a strategy is to set the case for trial, see if you get lucky and the officer doesn't show up. So that's really helpful to us because if I see if it's this one officer, I can call the client and say, 9 times out of 10, he's coming to court. So do you want to take the day off work when you're probably never going to get a dismissal with him?
Right.
Instead, just let us handle it and get you court supervision. So that information is really good to know. Other officers, I know how they're going to testify,
Yeah.
if they're going to testify well and credibly and calmly, or the opposite.
Right now, just to clarify, how do you know how they're going to testify?
Because I've cross-examined them before or
Right.
called them, as a witness on a hearing regarding somebody's license or like a motion to suppress. I would say far and away majority in DuPage, the officers are professional.
Sure.
They're by the book. They perform the field sobriety test according to NHTSA standards and stuff. And, if they make a mistake, they'll admit it. I know this one trooper where I got him twice on 2 trials on a DUI where he wasn't performing the eye test correctly. And then I saw a video, his squad video, and he did it correctly.
That's a cool story. So I want to hear about, so we represented somebody on a DUI, right? And you cross-examined them,
Yeah.
the officer on the stand, and you pointed out how you saw right there on the officer's own video, how he was performing the test not up to standard,
Yeah.
right? And then you did it again on a
Twice,
different
yeah.
case. Okay. And then you have the luxury of, another client hires us, same officer, and you get to watch his video a third
Yeah, I was
time.
like, damn it.
And he figured it out.
Yeah.
You trained him,
Yeah,
you taught
right.
him.
It was funny though, after the second trial, like he came up to me and he's like, I knew you were gonna get me on that again, And then he's cool. And he was like,
Yeah.
I think he was like, I'm not gonna let you get me again,
Right.
another time. So
Right.
yeah, he learned how to do it correctly. But yeah, I think it's just super important to kind of know some of the officers. The more we litigate, the more we get to know them, how they, are going to testify. And then that helps us to strategize and manage clients' expectations. If there's an officer who gets super riled up on the stand and makes the same mistakes in every single squad video, I might take a trial that's a little bit closer,
Yep.
a case 2 trial that's a little bit closer on him. Whereas somebody that I know always does it by the books, always super credible, been doing this a long time and it's close, I might say,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to win this one.
Yeah, that's sort of the customized or personal touch that you can only get if you're practicing there all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, I talk to a lot of our clients or potential clients all the time, and if you're hiring somebody for a DUI, of course, you want the absolute best DUI lawyer that you can have. But also, like I said, there's 102 counties here in Illinois, and I know some lawyers that'll go to most of them, right?
Yeah.
And good for them, but it's really hard to know those things, like those little nuanced things about how well they testify if you're not there every day.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes, that like Facebook group where you hear attorneys and stuff like that, I'm like, should you be taking a case in DuPage?
Right.
Like it doesn't sound like the procedures or the prosecutors or
Right.
yeah, there's a bunch of little nuances that just help overall, like big picture, help it be smoother. The fact that we know this and we're not wasting time, because we know this information.
So we talked a bit about the officers and, even some ways that we've been able to cross-examine them and win some cases. But it's not just the officers that we have to deal with. A big component of a traffic or criminal case is the prosecutor. That's really the opposing party in a case that we handle. So let's talk generally about the prosecutors that we come across in DuPage County.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's interesting about DuPage is, there is the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office, right? That's like a government entity. They get funding. They have an entire office of prosecutors. But then there's also a lot of village prosecutors. And typically those are private, usually defense attorneys themselves, that have a contract with the village and then they prosecute for that village.
Yes.
There's a few, solo practitioners and like bigger firms like us that prosecute for a lot of villages. And then there's some people who maybe only have like one,
Yep.
contract with one village. But I think we have like a really good understanding of who all of those different village prosecutors are, which villages they prosecute for, and what, their policies and procedures are. Same thing with the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office.
Let's break that down a little bit. So somebody gets it doesn't matter if it's DUI or a traffic ticket really, but say someone just gets a speeding ticket by the town of Villa Park. We're in Villa Park, right? It could be prosecuted by the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office because that speeding ticket, that incident occurred within DuPage County. Or it could be prosecuted by the prosecutor for the village of Villa Park. Right?
Right.
And sometimes I'm sure the average person doesn't even know, right, who their prosecutors or even what entity is prosecuting them. So just kind of doubles the amount of people that could be involved in the case, right?
Right.
Or a case. All right. And so which one? What is it, a 50-50 split? Like, you give me round numbers here.
No, I would say the private village prosecutors make up more cases than the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office, because DuPage is pretty much doing like ISP cases, which typically is going to be on an expressway, or the DuPage County Sheriff, which could be anywhere within the county.
Yep.
There are a couple of villages that don't have private contracts, so that goes to DuPage as well, but the majority of the villages in DuPage have private contracts with these village prosecutors.
For traffic tickets and
DUIs.
And DUIs,
Yeah.
right? Other traffic related
Right.
offenses.
Usually if it's going to be like a criminal misdemeanor or any felony, that's going to be the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office.
Right, exactly. So knowing who the players are is really important, right? Not only just from a procedural standpoint, like you want to serve the right people, the right paperwork, but also, they all have sort of different ways of handling cases, different tendencies, different preferences, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some villages that are super strict on like aggravated speeding tickets, for example. So a lot of times the way we handle those is to send a mitigation letter to the prosecutor, which is a letter about like the defendant, all the positive things about them. And our case managers make those phone calls and ask our clients the questions, and if you have somebody that's in the military or is a doctor or something like that, or a lot of times younger kids, like, and this is the first time, we know that prosecutor might give them a break. But, if it's somebody that has a really bad background, or maybe they don't have a ton of mitigation, we're like, this prosecutor is never going to reduce this because I know how they feel about aggravated speeding tickets.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, again, just knowing who the people are on the case, who the decision makers are on the case, right? And what their tendencies are. It can certainly make a difference in terms of the outcome of the case, but it also can make a difference in terms of timing. Like on a lot of cases, the moment someone hires us, we're like, okay, it's with this prosecutor. Here's always what they require, right? Here's how they typically handle these. We've done these before and we've gotten it reduced or dismissed or whatever the desired outcome is. And here's how we've done it in the past. let's start working on that now,
Right.
right? As opposed to showing up in court and saying like, okay, who's prosecuting this one today, right? If you know that, you can come in. Not only does it reduce time for clients with this case hanging over their head, number of court dates, but also I have this belief that it leads to better outcomes, right? Like people want to work with people who are on their game and prepared
Yeah.
and know it and not wasting their time.
Yeah.
And so that's a difference maker that I've
Right.
seen. I've seen a lot actually on our cases.
Yeah, there are certain village prosecutors who, they want everything electronically. There's other village prosecutors that they want us to bring everything to them, hard copy, in person on that court date.
Mhm.
There are certain prosecutors that want certain pieces of paper. Other prosecutors, like I know that if you say something that they want verification, like
Yep.
if you're like they're an Uber driver or something, or they haven't been driving, they've only been taking Ubers, they want you to send them proof that they've been taking a bunch of
Yes.
Ubers. Some prosecutors want the more the better, and other ones are like, give me some bullet
Sure.
points and let's
Yeah.
move on. So that's really helpful. I mean, we want to give the prosecutors like what they want and the way that they want it in order for us to get the best outcomes.
Yeah. Whereas earlier we said like the court system is very unified and they've got all these processes, procedures, and they all do it the same way. That is not true of the village prosecutors necessarily. And that's okay. Like Elmhurst chooses to do things differently than Naperville, or Lombard different than whatever, Villa Park. And that's okay. That's how they choose to prosecute. That's their discretion. But knowing it and knowing how to play within those guidelines is really helpful.
Right. And like some of the prosecutors, they're taking obviously their orders from the village, the mayor, the, chief of police at that police department, and their hands are tied sometimes on what they can and cannot offer. But that, makes a huge difference to us to just know that. Because again, it's not wasting time. Like I'm not going to ask the village of Elmhurst for something that I know I'm never going to get,
Yes.
And
I love that. Yeah. When I'm in court and I'm pushing for something, obviously a lot of cases are negotiated, right? And so when you're negotiating and you're getting a no, it's really helpful to know, like, is that you, the person I'm talking to, making that no decision? Or is there a higher power sort of making that no decision and your hands really are tied, right?
For sure.
Knowing that can only be, you can only know that from experience, but it can be really helpful in terms of actually resolving a case in a favorable way.
Yeah, for sure. I think too that like we know if a prosecutor works with a firm with other people, like you said, do they have a pecking order at that firm?
Yeah.
And is their response coming from their boss or is it coming from them? And if it's coming from them, maybe we do have a little leeway. And if somebody's a solo practitioner, their no is a straight no. You're not going to go over that person's head, right? But even certain things like we know who has, an assistant, an administrator at their firm and what they do. Like if we just have a discovery issue, we'll reach right out to that admin and they'll get back to us, and then we're not bothering, that solo practitioner that has a bunch of villages.
Yep.
So I think that they appreciate stuff like that too. It really helps too to just kind of know who's reasonable, like who's a true believer and who's not, I think too that we do have such a good relationship with a lot of the prosecutors that we can, kind of speak to them and be like, hey, X, Y, and Z, I'm going to send you mitigation. It's denied. Okay, no problem. Well, I have to put on a motion. I have to put on this trial, and they get it, but we try to resolve things like as best we can with them, first. So that's helpful.
For sure. Yep. So let's spend just a minute talking about the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office, right? There is like every county, at least here in Illinois, there is a elected official who is the prosecutor, the state's attorney, and then they have a bunch of assistant state's attorneys that work for them, and the assistant state attorneys are the ones in the courtroom, right, resolving cases. But it does come from the state's attorney, and they're an elected official on for a reason, and I think that's a good thing, right? That they set the tone for their county and how they choose to prosecute cases.
Absolutely.
You hear a lot about Cook County's prosecutors over the years, right?
Yeah.
DuPage County is starkly different. I'll just say that I think DuPage County prides itself on not being Cook County.
Yeah.
And that's an okay thing.
Yeah.
But I think like even in their communications and the way they handle things is they definitely want to draw a contrast between how they prosecute cases and how Cook County does, or maybe even sometimes doesn't prosecute a case.
Mhm.
And I think that permeates all the way to the courtroom.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that Bob Berlin is strict on crime, which makes sense. He's the prosecutor. And I think that he's done a good job with that. I think that most people know that maybe you're not going to get as good of a deal committing crimes in DuPage as you might in Cook. In Cook County, they have basically decriminalized retail theft up to $1,000. Bob Berlin does not, do that. He does prosecute all retail thefts, and um, actually, if it's a felony, he also charges everyone with a burglary too. Same thing with the driving on suspended licenses. He prosecutes all of those like to the
Yep.
fullest extent of the law. I've seen that the prosecutors have guidelines, about what their offers are. So for example, like they
Yes.
will not offer court supervision on a first time DUI, even though that's the minimum sentence, and somebody that only has one DUI is eligible for it. So that means that for us, we need to either do a conference with the judge or do what's called a blind plea.
Yep.
But the importance behind the guidelines is again consistency. So if you're in one courtroom and you're having a first time DUI, this is going to be your offer. Same thing as in the courtroom next door
Yes.
to it.
Yep.
So I do respect that. And then he's also super tough on school bus tickets.
Yes.
So if you're in a car and you're passing a school bus that's like unloading a child, he actually reviews all those mitigation letters himself.
Yes.
Which is huge. I mean,
I don't know where else that occurs,
No,
right?
I
At
don't
least
think
not nowhere else
anywhere.
we practice,
Yeah.
at least, right?
Yeah.
And so, we meet with him or write our letters to him in terms
Yeah,
of,
him specifically.
in terms of reaching an agreement or negotiating with him personally on this.
Right. The other thing is too that there is a specific process to the state's attorneys and where they're assigned, and again, like consistency expectations. When somebody the first round of law school students pass the bar and they start at the DuPage County State's Attorney's office, they're typically going to start on the first floor, and in Glendale Heights, that's your petties and your traffic misdemeanors, and then every 6 months they change, and that goes with people being sworn in to the bar, and then they move up to the misdemeanor rooms, DUIs and criminal misdemeanors and domestic batteries. And then they might move to juvie before they go on to felonies, but it's ordered, it's specific. They know where they're going, and when. So that's helpful to us, if you have a great reasonable state's attorney that takes their time with you and is willing to have meetings and answer your emails and your phone calls, and that they're leaving in a month, you might look at all of your cases in that room and say, let's talk about this,
Right, sure.
And then the other thing is that the mitigation letters, they're reviewed by their supervisor, and they have an appeal process too. So if the supervisor says no, you can appeal it to somebody above him. And we know that supervisor, we know he's reasonable.
Mhm.
We know who's appealing and the relationship they have. So again, it's about using our time the best we can.
Yep.
If it's not a great mitigation case or whatever, we're probably not going to appeal the denial because we know where that would go too. So just again, the knowledge, consistency, expectations, it makes our lives easier. It makes, the client's expectations better managed, and then they can take steps that they need to, whether it's about their driver's license or God forbid you have to go into custody or something. It makes it easier on everybody.
Yep, for sure. So there are a lot of different, so to sum up the prosecutors, there are a lot of different players in the game when it comes to DuPage County prosecutions, because we have both the villages and the state's attorney's office, each having their own share of cases. So knowing the differences in how they handle cases, really, really important. Another group of very, very, very important people in a criminal case or traffic case that may have differing opinions and way of doing things are the judges.
Mhm.
So, Kelly, tell me your first impressions and sort of what your thoughts are when I talk about the judges in DuPage County.
I'm very impressed with the judges in DuPage County. I think it's a really high caliber of people, some of whom, practiced alongside us before they were appointed or elected. But same thing, I feel like they're professional. I feel like they care. I feel like they take their time to like research the law and they're careful in their opinions, even if that means like taking a date or passing the case to talk to another judge or doing research. I feel like they're respectful to the litigants in their courtroom staff. And I think that they are very familiar with like DuPage County State's Attorney's Office and the different village prosecutors that are in their room and
Yep.
what kind of offers they make and like what's important to them and not important to them. So yeah, I mean, I like litigating in DuPage. I don't feel like I feel like we're given like a fair shake, you
Yeah.
know.
Which is really all you're asking for at the end of the day,
Mhm.
right? You want judges who treat everybody with respect, know the law, and then can say not guilty or say guilty, depending on
Right.
where the facts in the case lead them, right? But you want to get your fair shake, is like you said. I think, yeah, I totally agree. In all my time practicing DuPage, I feel the same way. It's kind of like like stick with me here. I think it's like the New York sort of broken windows theory, if you will. If you've heard of this before, right? Like it's like, even in an abandoned building, New York would try to sort of fix up the window, not have broken windows, right? Because it just makes everyone passing by sort of take pride in sort of the city and how it works and in the operations of it. It's kind of similar here to DuPage, right? Like new people come in, but they see everybody else and how they operate and with a standard set of procedures and they treat everybody professionally and consistently so that you're the new person, whether you're a prosecutor or a judge or even a defense attorney, you're going to walk in and you're going to say like, all right, I see how they do it. There's a certain expectation here. And so let me meet that expectation. And then as a group, it rarely, if ever, falls below that sort of standard that is set countywide.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that a message is sent in DuPage that there's consequences for your actions and those are enforced, which sometimes can make it difficult for our clients when we're representing defendants, but it also, maybe sends a message that you do need to come to court when you're required to come to court and you are expected to act in a certain way. I think one thing too that's beneficial about like us at driver defense team and the fact that we are in Wheaton every day and like we know the judges and the prosecutors and stuff like that, I feel like we have a good reputation with the judges.
Sure.
Like I think that when we set a case for trial, they expect that we're going to answer ready. We're not just like never prepared and getting continuance after continuance, which they don't allow in DuPage, which is so nice. But that also when we are putting on a trial that we are prepared. We know the rules of evidence and we are respectful to like the witnesses and the prosecutor. Same thing when we have to do like a 402 conference or an issues conference with the judge, like they feel comfortable that we like are good attorneys, and there's a reason why we're litigating or there's a reason why we're asking for a conference.
Yep.
We probably already tried to work it out with the state and couldn't. So I think that that's really helpful to us and our clients.
Yep. They do things the right way. We certainly try to do things the right way as well.
For
Yep.
sure.
Now, maybe if you're watching this video, one of your biggest questions is in terms of outcomes, right? That may be why you're watching this. Obviously impossible to sort of say what any one individual outcome is. So we really have to sort of box these all up and make huge generalizations, kind of like we've been doing when it comes to the officers,
Yeah.
prosecutors, and judges anyways, right? But just maybe even when compared to some other counties, what do you think of when I talk about like how good the outcomes are in DuPage?
I personally do feel like DuPage County is tougher on the defense bar.
Sure.
But I also feel like the consistency allows us to manage our clients' expectations from the get-go. And, as I said, I think that that's really helpful for a number of different reasons, like getting your affairs in order if need be, knowing, what days you are going to have to take off work and stuff like that. And one thing that I really like about DuPage is like if you're set for a trial or a motion, the judge is going to give like you and the state each a chance to have a continuance, but they're not going to continue the case ad infinitum like a lot of Cook County
Yeah.
judges do and like let the state take the entire demand time. You know, you don't have to demand in DuPage because you know that they are not going to give the state a ton of continuances. They actually force the state to follow the statute for a motion for a continuance, where they have to file a written motion, serve us with it, and have an affidavit as to one of the statutory reasons for a continuance. So that sometimes does lead to a dismissal quicker than you maybe get in Cook County.
Yep.
And like I said, you know, I think that they are tougher on crime. So that means that we do have to send a lot of mitigation letters in DuPage and maybe do a lot of blind pleas and a lot of conferences to get, you know, the minimum that the client is eligible for, even if the state's attorney doesn't want to necessarily offer it.
Sure. Yep. Yep. I agree. They are, like I said, they want to be different than Cook County. Cook County is, and for good reason, Cook County is known for better or worse. Well, I'm not even saying it's true. I'm just saying they generally, more broadly, are known for not prosecuting some things, right? Or maybe not even being as tough in prosecuting some things. Again, I'm not saying it's even true, but that's what they're known for. And so I think DuPage County, in some sense, is trying to do the opposite. And so that does mean a heavy hand, well, my opinion, a heavy hand on some clients, right? On some defendants. They maybe don't get as favorable an outcome as DuPage County as they would in Cook County. That's safe to say, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one thing too, it's like Cook County hands out deferred prosecution a lot, which I love because it's a no-brainer. Just do what they ask you to do and your case is dismissed and you can expunge it. That's not really true in DuPage. And the deferred prosecution they do offer are legitimate programs, you know,
Right.
like MyCap, the mental health court program, or, you know, drug court or veterans court or something. But those are like 12-month intense programs. They're not just like do 10 hours of community service and
Right.
get this
Yes,
dismissed, you know.
exactly.
So
But the great equalizer is, so I just said, like, you know, you may have a heavier hand in DuPage County than you would in Cook. But the great equalizer, I mean, under the Constitution, right, is that you are innocent until proven guilty, and you've got to be proven guilty in court, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. And the great equalizer is that I believe the judges in DuPage County do hold the prosecution to that, right?
mhm,
And so if you have a winning case, you can win it in DuPage County.
for sure.
Yes, and that's important at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I've won pretrial motions to, you know, suppress based on probable cause or an officer outside of their jurisdiction. We win trials all the time. You know, I think too that we analyze a case, you know, and we have a conversation with the client, sometimes difficult conversations to say, like, you know, you either have a chance or you don't. Like, this is a dead bang loser. I'm sorry, you have no defense. Let's try and get you the best possible plea deal. Whereas other firms or attorneys, I feel like, set a lot of stuff for trial that maybe they never really even intend to go to
It doesn't go to
trial.
trial.
Yeah, or they know they're not going to win. They're just doing it to appease the client. And I think again, the judges and the prosecutors like know that about us, and I think that that is a reason why we do have a good track record, because we're not setting every single case for trial. We're setting the cases for trial that have a legitimate defense.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. Yeah, and the opposite's also true, right?
sure.
You shouldn't and don't plea everything. If you got a winning
Yeah,
case, you got ground to stand
absolutely.
on, absolutely you need to defend your case in court.
Yeah, I mean, we're trial attorneys. We like going to trial. I like reviewing a squad video and a body worn camera and saying, like, I have an issue here. This is a trial for sure. You know, that's a lot more fun. I don't want to plead people out, you know. Sometimes you have to, but I think it's about our reputation too, you know. And it makes a big difference when we're interacting with the prosecutors and the judges. And one specific client may not see that, but there's a lot that's been going on for years since we've been open in the background, you know, to like lead us to this positive place.
All right, guys, there you have it. We broke down DuPage County in detail. We talked about all the processes and procedures that they follow and how they handle things there. We talked about the officers. We talked about the prosecutors. We even talked about the judges and outcomes generally in DuPage County. So we covered it all. And in closing here, I would tell you that it's really, really important for you or your lawyer to know the players in the game. If you're playing against an opponent in sports or otherwise, you wanna do some scouting ahead of time, right? You wanna know who's you're playing against, what their tendencies are, and you wanna put yourself in the best position possible to win. And you can only do that if you're there day in and day out putting in the reps. So if you need help with a DuPage County case, feel free to give us a call. Thanks for watching.